Yosemite is one of the most iconic landscapes in America. Granite cliffs, waterfalls that drop like thunder, forests so deep they swallow sound. It's a place millions visit to feel small, to feel awed. But beneath the beauty, Yosemite has always had a darker rhythm. People vanish here. People fall and are never recovered or found. And some people don't fall by accident. Netflix's Untamed taps into that very idea. It opens with a woman's body discovered at the base of El Cap, or El Capitan, if you've never heard of it. A sheer vertical wall famous among climbers, feared by rescue teams. What follows is a story full of cover-ups, cartel routes, murder, and a federal investigator named Kyle Turner trying to unravel a depth no one seems eager to explain. But while Untamed plays like fiction, it's grounded in something real, a wilderness that has always been dangerous, sometimes mysteriously so, and occasionally violently so. Yosemite has buried secrets in its own, and long before Netflix came along, there were stories coming out of those woods that were just as shocking as anything on screen. Today we're going to separate the drama from the documentation. What's real, what's exaggerated, and what happened in Yosemite that might have inspired a show like Untamed in the first place. And I'm going to say it. It's been out long enough that I don't think I need to do spoiler warnings. If you haven't watched it, go watch it. It's a great show. I loved it. I binged it, like, right through it. And hopefully you enjoy this breakdown. Like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the comments section. In Untamed, we follow Special Investigator Kyle Turner, played by Eric Bana. He works for the National Park Service's law enforcement arm. Yes, that's a real thing. We'll get to that. And he's called in to investigate a suspicious death. A woman found dead below El Cap. At first, it seems like an accident. A hiker, maybe a climber, who fell. But Turner isn't buying it. The woman's identity is hidden. Her cause of death doesn't line up. And the more he digs, the more threads begin to show. Smuggling routes through the park, a history of abuse and cover-ups, and a personal loss from his own past that begins bleeding into the case. It's a slow burn thriller, brooding, heavy on atmosphere, and it leans hard into Yosemite's isolation. The idea that things can happen out there, in the woods or on the cliffs, that no one will ever find out about. But while Untamed works as a fictional drama, it borrows a lot from real life. It doesn't use real names, and it doesn't claim to be based on a true story, but you can feel the real-world tension underneath it all. Because Yosemite has always had its ghosts. Let's start with something simple and true. Yosemite is dangerous. Between 2006 and 2016, the National Park Service recorded over 250 deaths in Yosemite. That includes falls, drownings, heat exhaustion, hypothermia, and yes, a few deaths that were never fully explained. El Cap alone has claimed dozens of climbers, even experienced ones. The cables at Half Dome, another popular hike, have seen people slip and vanish. Sometimes the bodies are recovered and sometimes they're never found. A ranger once told Outside magazine, quote, "Yosemite's beauty invites people to test their limits, but Yosemite doesn't care about your limits." In one infamous incident, 3 young tourists were swept over the edge of Vernal Fall after crossing a safety barrier to take a photo. In another, a hiker disappeared on a well-marked trail and was never seen again. Rescuers found his pack, his map, his camera, but not him. These aren't outliers. Yosemite averages dozens of search and rescue missions every month during peak season. And because of the terrain, cliffs, canyons, and rivers, not every mission ends with a clean answer. So when Untamed begins with a body at the base of El Cap, The idea isn't far-fetched. That part is real. It's just the beginning that usually gets forgotten. Now let's move from accidental deaths to something much darker: murder. In 1999, Yosemite became the center of a national nightmare when 4 women were killed in or near the park. Carol Sund, her 15-year-old daughter Julie, their teenage friend Sylvania Peloso, and naturalist Joey Armstrong. All of them were murdered by a man named Cary Steiner, a handyman at the Cedar Lodge just outside Yosemite's El Portal entrance. Steiner wasn't just a criminal, he was a textbook predator hiding in plain sight, quiet, polite, and invisible. His brother, Stephen, had been nationally known decades earlier after surviving a notorious kidnapping. Cary, the older brother, had been largely forgotten until he snapped. The Sund family had been staying at the Cedar Lodge when they vanished. Their rental car was found weeks later, burned out with the bodies of Carol and Sylvania inside. Julie's remains weren't recovered until much later. Then, before investigators could even close the case, Joey Armstrong, a young park naturalist, was found decapitated near her cabin in the woods. Steiner confessed to all 4 killings in graphic detail. But what's more chilling is how close he came to getting away with it. At one point, the FBI was pursuing an entirely different lead, a suspected meth gang from Modesto. Steiner wasn't even on their radar until after the second case. When his name came up, he was questioned, then let go. Even now, investigators admit he wasn't the profile they expected. No violent record, no obvious signs of escalation. He was just a quiet guy who hiked, worked maintenance, and slept in his car when he felt overwhelmed. After his arrest, tourism dipped. The park lost part of its innocence, and the media did what the media does, labeled him the Yosemite Killer. Untamed doesn't mention Steiner by name, but the blueprint is there: a body in the woods, a park with secrets, and a man who doesn't belong, but somehow fits in. Now let's talk about Kyle Turner, the investigator in Untamed. Is that a real job? Absolutely. The National Park Service has a federal law enforcement division called the ISB, Investigative Services Branch. They're not park rangers in the tourist sense, they're federal agents, plain clothes, armed, trained to handle homicides, assaults, sexual violence, kidnappings, missing persons, and multi-jurisdictional crimes inside U.S. park boundaries. Think of them like the FBI of the wilderness, except unlike the FBI, ISB agents are often working completely alone. No backup, no forensics team behind them, and according to a 2022 NPS report, ISB agents opened over 600 felony-level investigations in a single year, and that's not counting the cases they inherited from overwhelmed local offices. They cover over 80 million acres of federal land, from the Everglades to Denali. In Untamed, Kyle Turner is portrayed as a grieving, hard-edged investigator with one foot in the bureaucracy and the other in the dirt. That part's not far from reality. Former ISB agent Christopher Smith described the job as solitary, tense, and always underfunded. Agents often needed to hike into crime scenes carrying their own gear. There's no cruiser, no CSI lab waiting at the edge of the woods. One real-world case involved a backpacker who went missing in Glacier National Park. His remains were eventually found near a remote cliffside, and ISB tracked the case down to foul play involving an accomplice on the trail. The resolution took years, not days. So when Untamed shows Turner interviewing witnesses, digging through buried logs, and working his way around bureaucratic red tape, that's closer to a documentary than a drama. Most people don't know the NPS even has its own detectives, let alone ones who cover cases this complex, but they do. And they've seen things most agents in big cities never will. I'm assuming when they find a body, I mean, like, you're looking at like animals eating at it and everything like that. You're not seeing that in the city. But you're like, oh, we found this body in the city, and it's a body, and you're able to be like, oh yeah, clear cut, like this person was murdered for sure. But then you go out into the national parks, and it's like, ooh, is it murder? Is it an accident? We can't tell really. The animals have picked at the remains. It's probably a lot more difficult, especially that remote. And also, I can't say this enough, go in and watch the show. I mean, it's really good. They do a really good job at it. Matter of fact, watching the show and building this script made me go, oh, there's more as well in the show. In the show, they say something about this specific spirit, and I'm going to be covering that specific spirit, the ghost of Grouse Lake. So I'm going to do an episode on that as well. This is where the line between fiction and reality starts to blur. In Untamed, Kyle Turner uncovers a network of smuggling routes running through Yosemite. Weapons, drugs, people, hidden in plain sight inside the country's most protected land. Sounds far-fetched, right? Except it's not. Across California, including land bordering Yosemite, law enforcement has busted dozens of cartel-linked marijuana grow operations hidden in national forests. Between 2010 and 2015, the U.S. Forest Service and DEA dismantled grow sites with tens of thousands of plants, many staffed by undocumented workers brought in specifically to tend the crops. These aren't hobbyist grows. They're organized, armed, and dangerous. Rangers have walked into camps rigged with booby traps, tripwires, and camouflaged bunkers. In one bus near Yosemite's western edge, agents found an AK-47 propped next to a cooking pot and rows of fertilizer stacked alongside chemical runoff. Streams had been rerouted to support the grow, killing fish downstream and leaching poisons into protected wetlands. The environmental damage alone is catastrophic. These grow sites leave behind dead soil, shredded canopy, and toxic pesticide residue that can remain for years. Wildlife gets sick, native species disappear, and the forest never quite recovers. In a 2020 congressional testimony, park law enforcement officials warned that some national parks are being used as corridors for organized crime, especially where terrain makes surveillance difficult. So when Untamed shows Turner chasing leads through Yosemite's canyons and forests, chasing a conspiracy that seemed implausibly large, it's actually reflecting something real. The show inflates the scale. Sure, that's what thrillers do, but the seed of truth is buried deep in the dirt, and in some cases, still growing. So let's cover some fact and fiction. So in this case, if you haven't seen the show, yes, spoilers ahead for Untamed Season 1, but you should have seen it by now, especially if you're clicking on this video. Untamed builds itself on top of a solid foundation: bodies, investigators, and remote danger. But from there, it does what most shows do. It emotionalizes the mystery. Here's what really happens. The Jane Doe found at the base of El Cap turns out to be Lucy Cook, the secret daughter of Paul Souter, the very man Turner trusted most, the park's chief ranger. Souter kept her hidden from his official record, denied her, avoided her, and when her death drew scrutiny, he cracked under the weight of it, ultimately taking his own life before the full truth could be brought to light. At the same time, Turner, already reeling from the long-ago death of his young son, learns that his child's death wasn't the accident he believed it to be. His grief has been shaped by a lie. The two investigations collapse into each other. So how does that compare to Yosemite's real history? Falls and fatalities, undeniably real. Yosemite's cliffs are no stranger to tragedy. El Cap, Half Dome, and other iconic landmarks have claimed the lives of dozens of climbers, hikers, and casual visitors. Between 2006 and 2016 alone, the park recorded over 250 visitor deaths, many of them due to falls from sheer granite faces or missteps along narrow ridgelines. These are not isolated incidences. They are a consistent, sobering feature of Yosemite's history. The park's awe-inspiring scale doesn't forgive human error, and in that sense, the inciting incident of Untamed, a body discovered at the base of El Cap, rings chillingly true. NPS investigators, very real. The Investigative Service Branch, ISB, of the National Park Service, NPS, functions as a small elite unit of federal agents responsible for investigating major crimes in U.S. national parks, including homicide, sexual assault, child endangerment, and organized crime activity. These agents often work remotely with minimal backup and long travel times, especially in parks like Yosemite, where rugged terrain complicates response. Turner's role in Untamed is not a stretch. He represents the real-life agents who quietly carry out high-stakes investigations in some of America's most isolated and unforgiving landscapes. Criminal activity in national parks. Verified. National parks are not sealed sanctuaries. They're open, sprawling, lightly patrolled areas with complex terrain, which makes them ideal for all sorts of criminal activity. Illegal marijuana grow operations have been discovered throughout California's national forests and even on the fringes of Yosemite. In many of these cases, law enforcement linked the sites to larger cartel networks operating across state lines. Smugglers have used national parks as covert transit routes. The remoteness and lack of cell signal aren't just problems for tourists, they're opportunities for criminals. A hidden daughter tied to the chief ranger? No such case exists. This twist is pure dramatic fiction. There is no known case in Yosemite or any other national park involving a senior park official hiding the existence of a child, let alone one who turns up dead under suspicious circumstances. It's a compelling narrative device designed to inject personal stakes into the investigation and add moral ambiguity to the show's authority figures. But in real life, such a tangled, high-level family scandal involving park leadership simply hasn't occurred, and certainly not under circumstances that ended in tragedy and suicide. Ranger suicide over a family cover-up. Totally fictional. As said before, the idea of a chief ranger taking their own life to protect a dark family secret adds emotional gravity to the show, but it's a made-for-television construction. While suicide is sadly not unheard of among law enforcement officers due to stress, trauma, or internal pressure, there's no real-world counterpart to the Souter storyline. This plot point is part of the show's broader theme of systemic rot and emotional collapse, but it doesn't reflect any publicly documented incidences in Yosemite's law enforcement history. Turner's son's death linked to the same case. Totally fictional. This is where Untamed leans into melodrama. The reveal that Turner's son's death is connected to the same web of corruption behind the central murder elevates the story's emotional stakes, but at the cost of plausibility. In reality, while investigators may carry personal trauma into their work, There are no documented cases of a federal park investigator whose child's death was secretly orchestrated by the same people they were later investigating. It's a convergence designed for maximum impact and maximum fiction. Where Untamed succeeds is in making the audience feel like it could happen. Everything is just close enough to reality that lies become palatable. But that's the trick and the danger. It's not the fiction that gets you, it's the truth-adjacent storytelling that makes you wonder, what else might they be hiding? And honestly, watching the show is what made me make this episode, because I was like, how much of this is stated in fact? Because we all know how big Yosemite is. It's freaking huge. So, I mean, take that with a grain of salt. The real reason Untamed feels so heavy is because Yosemite already carries that weight. This isn't a park where nothing bad happens. It's a place where nature can kill you, where humans have killed each other, and where bodies are sometimes found with no clear answers. Netflix didn't invent that. They just gave it a soundtrack. But there's something eerie about the way Untamed mirrors what we already know. That the most beautiful places are often the most dangerous. That grief doesn't stay buried. That truth doesn't always surface. Yosemite will keep drawing in climbers, hikers, tourists, but it will also keep its secrets. Some people will fall, some will vanish, and some stories will never get told at all.